Darkly Cinematic Apparatus is a combination of the first four libraries by RAR. This instrument allows you to produce a range of dark and atmospheric textures. The design is simple and offers detailed and powerful parameters to create your sound. Once opening the Darkly Cinematic Apparatus, there are 4 voice slots that can be changed and edited. The default layout is the first incarnation. The first incarnation also has a range of samples that can be loaded into the slot. By clicking on the select button, the same also applies for listening station. The next slot is marxophone. Listening station and student vibraphone. If you want to change the library of the slot, move the dial, then press change. If you loaded up the first incarnation or the listening station, you can change the sample being used on the tab below. There are 2 buttons to the left of each strip. The red button enables the voice, and the one below is a solo button, which will make all other voices inactive. Each slot has a volume, pan, tuning, and drive parameter. The second row of parameters will be unique to whichever library is loaded. For example, first incarnation has parameters for rotary mix, delay level, delay time, and delay feedback. The marxophone has cabinet speaker options, threshold velocity for trill, this will set at what velocity the marxophone will trill at. The more to the left, the lower the velocity that will be needed for a trill to happen. Trill volume, and trill release. Listening station has controls for time stretch speed. Turning the dial right will increase the speed, making the effect shorter, and turning the dial left will slow the speed of the time stretch, increasing the length of the effect. And the grain artifacts. When turning the dial to the right, the sound is more natural. When turned to the left, it adds more grain. Student vibraphone has parameters for cabinet choice, tremolo speed, and tremolo amount. Next, let's look at the envelope, modulation, and copy functions. Each of the 4 voices has its own window for both envelope and modulation parameters. To open them, click on the E or M buttons. When opening the envelope window, make sure to click the envelope active box. Envelope has controls for attack, hold, decay, sustain, and release. If you'd like to link your envelope settings with the rest of your slots, press the Link Envelope button. This gives you the option to control all slot envelopes as one. Let's look at the modulation window. This section lets you control the volume LFO, with multi-shaped oscillators to control your sound. To begin, make sure to enable the volume LFO active box. The parameters for the volume LFO are F, which is how fast the LFO oscillates. This will become apparent once an LFO shape level has been brought up with it, as this increases the speed of the LFO. S, which is the sine wave shape level. R, which is the rectangle shape level. And question mark, which is the random shape level of the LFO. As you increase the value of these parameters, the more noticeable the LFO will become. There is also an option to link the volume LFO settings with the other voices too, by clicking here. Next to the volume LFO parameters, there are some filter parameters to EQ each voice. There are parameters to high pass and low pass your voice. There are also resonance parameters for the high pass and low pass filters too. This allows you to play with different sonic properties for your sound. As with the other envelope and modulation parameters, you can link these slot filters with other voices too, by clicking on the Link Slot Filters button. The pitch modulation has 8 available parameters. There is attack, decay, sustain, and release. There are also LFO controls for the pitch modulation too. This mirrors the parameters found on the volume LFO. Frequency, which changes the speed of the modulation. A parameter for the sine wave pitch mod. By increasing these values, the modulation and pitch will become more noticeable. Rectangle waveform and random waveform. Mod amount lets you control the number of semitones the pitch modulation extends to. Another useful feature in this instrument is the copy function below the modulation window. This allows you to copy and paste the slot parameters and library selection. This won't copy over the settings for envelope and modulation, as there are link options already available for that. Now let's look at the EQ and reverb parameters. These 3 parameters are EQ controls, giving you the option to change parameters for high, mid, and low frequencies. Below the EQ controls, there are reverb parameters too. This area lets you decide what type of reverb you'd like to use. You have 10 varied options available. The control above this sets the amount of reverb applied to your voice. At default, this is set at 0. The red button lets you control if you'd like the reverb to be pre- or post-slot EQ. Now, let's take a look at the global parameters section. First, let's look at the compressor. To use this, click on the Enable button. There are controls for threshold, ratio, attack, gain, and release. There is also a limiter button, which will dramatically increase the ratio of compression applied. Automix is a unique feature which will automatically match your different voices using a subtle EQ. Automix is a function designed to help balance and glue your sounds together, as you may be choosing voices that have substantial tonal differences. It does this by ducking frequency build-ups, according to how many notes are held. This means you can have bigger chords, but without big resonant build-ups. The further right you turn the dial, the more it will affect your sound. This is particularly effective with full-bodied and aggressive sounds. Looseness is a control which adds a natural delay between each slot. The increased separation makes the voices sound more live and authentic, as if each slot was a different person playing slightly out of sync. Slot 1 will remain unaffected regardless of the position of the dial, and slot 4 will become more delayed as you increase the looseness. The further right you turn the dial, the more of a delay there will be between each voice. The global distortion parameter has two different settings. The red is a softer drive, closer to a tube distortion. The tone dial will dampen the sound the more it is increased. The yellow setting has more top end and adds thickness to the sound. Adding tone will increase presence. The global chorus effect is pretty simple. The depth control has an exponential curve, which will increase how much chorus is added at a much higher rate. This chorus adds subtle width and texture to the sound. To edit and use the Arpeggiator function, press the small Arpeggiator tab. This will open the Arpeggiator pane. To turn on the Arpeggiator, make sure to press the on/off button. This area relates to the note order of the Arpeggiator, giving you the option to set the movement of your sequence. The repeat option lets you set how many times a single note is repeated before moving to the next one set in the sequence. Each note will now play 3 times before moving to the next step. Now 5. The octave parameter allows you to set whether the sequence will continue further up or down the octave. Merge notes will play all the notes struck, so you can play chords alongside the sequence. This is without. The higher the value in the swing parameter, the more swung the sequence will become. Other features include number of steps, which refer to how many steps are in 1/4 sequence. This works within the division currently selected. Division refers to the rhythmic value of the arpeggiator, giving you a choice to increase or decrease the note value of your sequence. There is a rhythm table at the top of the arpeggiator. This allows you to edit the volume at each step in the sequence. To edit this, simply click on the table and drag. To close the arpeggiator, press the tab again. The random button changes all aspects of the instrument. Great for quickly scrolling through different combinations. The preset tab can be found at the bottom right of the instrument. It's very straightforward to load one up. Simply double click on a preset name to load it. This will also show a brief description. This will give you a hint of what is possible within the different combinations of the voices. There are hundreds to choose from. Saving your own preset is a bit different to normal. Simply type the name of your preset, followed by clicking on Save. The preset will appear in the user folder once you reload the instrument. Thanks for watching everyone. This is now available at www.rathlianraw.com.